Well, that was definitely not the retake the thumbnail button. Guess I'm live. So, sounds off. New cue. Rolls off the tongue. New cue, new cue. So much fun. Question though. It's always been a question. Why do certain things get what they do? Because one of my issues with some of these, not necessarily patriots, because I see their content. I'm not paying them for it, so I'll get on that front. But things like faith healing, things like drinking bleach, that whole Ramtha thing, the whole Q verified stuff. Things don't live in a vacuum. And I understand that it's, let's move this down. There we go. It's better that the word gets spread than not at all. There are lots of people who serve certain functions, and it's amazing that they've garnered the audience that they have. Bravo. At the same time, and this is always the case no matter what you're doing, there is the um, desire to make it about yourself in a sense. And if we're going to go all biblical because God wins, though, don't get me wrong, in every Bible, God wins. Otherwise, what are you reading? Even Terrain in Hell. Technically, God wins, but there's caveats. So, the things like the faith healing, that's dangerous. I can cure whatever. Look, I made one foot longer than the other, and now it's the same size. Oh, it's amazing. Let me interpret dreams for you. I saw a thing, right? It was a cliff, running towards a cliff, jumping off a cliff. And I fell upwards, and I knew that God's glory was great. Because God always wins. Because that's the story. No matter how you retell it, it's all the same story. Something, 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 Deus Ex Machina, thumbs up. It's great. But then there's stuff like the drinking bleach, and that's especially dangerous. And it's used against everything, anything positive. It's like, oh yeah, but bleach and Sather and aliens. Yeah, aliens told you to drink bleach. That's awesome. What? No, it's not. It's a magic mineral solution. Yeah, that's it. You use it to purify water in really small amounts, and you let it kind of do its thing first. And then, in an emergency where you're doing this in the first place, then you can consume it after a certain amount of time. But you're not drinking it for the bleach. And this fool wanted to be verified, quote unquote. And the Ramtha stuff, it's very in the same vein, you know, secret messages, back to interpreting dreams, if you will. Hearing things, seeing stuff that no one else does, creating a following, capitalizing off of it. I mean, there are ways to do it, ways not to do it. So you have nonsense religions, you have nonsense science, and then you have nonsense takes on both. And every now and then it's pointed to, because it's not necessarily about the entirety of the work. It's just, is this a true statement? Well, that's the important thing. Maybe attention needs to be paid to other aspects, perhaps. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, just because the religion du jour is having a holy day, if you will, it still doesn't mean right. Like, how many good things came because Zeus willed it? How many how many people knew that the gods were real? Oh, if you just pray, you will know the gods are real. And they're benevolent and they're glorious, and we must worship them because the God of man is an egotistical solipsist according to the scenario. Like, there is nothing but God. God is all. God is wonderful. God is so benevolent, so merciful. Yes, God doesn't have to be nice to us. God could be a raging dick, but thank them in their benevolence that they are not raging dicks. Like, what are you saying? Honestly. Like, this is my biggest beef with, like, Q people, with Republicans, a lot of Trump supporters. And it doesn't matter which direction it's coming from, but we're going to go with Christian because that's the predominance, if you will. Um, I mean, like, the Jews the same way, the Muslims the same way, Hindus for Trump. You know, we rarely hear about them, but he is an avatar of Ganesha, so they're doing their thing. But it makes absolutely no sense to cling to it. Like, you have this group of people and everyone is claiming, oh yes, we're thinking for ourselves, we're questioning everything except this one thing, and if you dare question it, then you are a sheep and you're not thinking for yourself. Only if you believe this book are you thinking for yourself and believing. I don't know how many gods I've been told to pray to and ask if it's real, and they will let me know. I will know the way. Oh, wow. My soul will be lifted. Everything will be lighter. Oh my God. And I'm just over here like, can y'all prove any of this? And they claim they don't have to. And then I claim I don't have to believe in it. But then apparently that makes me the bad guy because I've been presented with an incredible scenario. And I'm supposed to impeach concepts over it? Ooh, hold on there. Because I was in a good conversation on the Donald on the Discords, and this one guy was like, "Hey, I'm not sure about what you're saying. We should bring you to this Grace Christian Circle Jerk server." And I'm like, I really don't think you want to do that. And they were like, "No, no, you must come. You must join." I'm like, okay. And there was a questionnaire, and this questionnaire was, do you believe in God? Do you believe that Jesus died for your sins and that he is the Son of God, if not God incarnate, and the only way to heaven and salvation, and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. Like, for starters, died for me for my sins. I can't do that for others. No one can do that. You can't just claim, I die for everyone's sins. My death means this. Yeah, it's what I say it is. Because that's how you end up with like a bunch of martyrs and stuff. It's like, I'm not doing a bad thing. I'm doing an amazing thing. Oh, okay. Got it. And why should I believe that? Who told me? If you trace the lineage, I mean, yeah, a lot of the Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic traditions, they all come from the same source. I mean, you look at the Pope, he's a fish hat fool. And the Dagons, the Sumerians and Akkadians. Ooh, stuff gets fun, especially like when you start looking into the god kings and how they would reign and how the rulers in the other areas would take their names. So no matter where you go, the god king is always in charge. Like it's like Marduk. There we go. Ishtar. Like, there's archetypes, the ones that keep getting reused over and over again and referenced as claims to power. The gods always win, right? I mean, because when a god loses, doesn't the victor then claim the title of God? Technically, people could then say that it was always the God, just like in the Bible. It's like, oh yes, they were always talking about Jesus. They just didn't know it yet. Oh, I see. So no matter how specific they thought they were, that no. Oh, and don't forget about Noah. And apparently he brought extra feeder animals, like a couple 7 pairs, just to make sure all the carnivores were taken care of, supposedly, let alone all the herbivores and their particular needs. And then I don't even want to know where he was keeping the bacteria and infectious diseases and the birds. What did they do? I mean, I think it'd be easy to store birds, but then again, you have birds of prey and you can't really trust them just up there. I mean, unless God's just kind of mind controlling everything, but that wasn't mentioned. And also, it says unicorns are real. Maybe that's what they were calling rhinoceroses. I don't know. There's a lot of excuses you can make. And the flood. I mean, we're expected to believe that this is the one only reason there's animals, for starters. It's just that. And this is how the world got repopulated. Never explains where the other people came from. But if you dare bring up stuff like Hindus going into caves or Native Americans going underground or the possibility of the Egyptians going underground also, but underneath the pyramids, which were giant water mitigation structures because the Nile would flood on the regular, or in the Amazon where there's a lot of rain and it probably floods on the regular and they'd go underground, or just, I mean, to Glepi Teki, something like that. Wherever it's hot, go to the ground. It's chill down there. They do it in Australia. They do it all over the place. And so they'd come up, with 1 foot in the water, 1 foot in the land. Where did they come from to restart society? Right? We know the way, the things, the stuff that you were totally freaked out and forgot about. You didn't know how to do this stuff, but we, the ones who were pieced out, we're going to show you how to do the thing. We're going to get this ball rolling. There's a lot of Randall Carlson mixed up in that. But don't you dare bring that up. You can question anything except Christianity a lot of times in these Q Donald Republican areas. It's okay if you're a Jew, but you got to be like super religious. It's like, okay, well, you just haven't accepted the Christ yet, but you're doing your best. We'll see you in hell from heaven, but you have fun down there. Of course, I'm going to Muslim hell too, because there was that whole Ishmael and Isaac split, right? And it's conceited. Like, they talk down to everybody. Like, one of the main splits that you'll find, it's like, oh, you don't believe in the Jesuses? Trump believes in Jesus, therefore you should believe in Jesus. It's like, yeah, maybe. He also is on the Republican ticket right now. He's not a Republican. He's an American. There's a huge difference. Like, Trump is the party. Without him, there's nothing there but more swamp creatures, maybe a few people trying to do the right thing. But what are they going to do when everyone who okays everything and has the authority to convince everybody of everything that, oh no, this is how it should be? Yeah, like the Iowa caucus. There's nothing to see there. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, nothing to see there either. All these attacks in Europe, burning down of Notre Dame, nothing to see there. Oh, it's an electrical fire. It's still burning. How do you know that? Don't worry about it. What about that guy on the roof? You're a bigot. Or the coronavirus. It's like, I don't want to get it. Well, then you hate Chinese people, don't you? To the gulag with you. If your religion is the state. But it all comes back to that. Like, it's just this religion. Like, what do you really think is going on here? Like, ultimately, it's going to be a great awakening, but it's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people. Again, where'd you get your Bible from? Was it from the guy who bangs kids in the robe wearing the fish hat and the red shoes? and all its friends too, who will and have literally killed people for not believing in their narrative, because their narrative is their power. Their narrative is actually tied to a lot of power, because a lot of power is based on that narrative. And without that narrative, you wouldn't accept it. I mean, at the same time, it can be used against you, but it can be used for a better purpose, because not all psyops are evil. Let's say that the predominant way of thinking is a particular religion, whether it's Christianity in the West or Islam in the Middle East or Buddhism in the Far East or whatever it is. I mean, it can all be tailored. Like this, it's kind of like it gets down to what or who is God, or what is a God class being, or what's even going on here now, which is, my question. But you're not supposed to ask that. You're supposed to just accept what's handed to you. Oh, yes, all the people have meditated on what this other guy said. And if you don't meditate on what this other guy said, well, you're not keeping up. I mean, this is what's going on for like thousands of years. It's like, yeah, and it hasn't evolved at all. Yeah, because God's eternal and like his word. Oh, his word. Whose word are you taking that's his word? Just, well, I talk to God on a regular basis. Oh, you do? That's magic. And what are you basing this off of? Do you have a control, a variant? Do you, or manipulation? Like what? How do you know that the highest being you've ever talked to is indeed the tippy top? I mean, it's just so arrogant. Read your Bible. Yeah, everyone has a Bible. A Bible is just the English word for a holy scripture or whatever, or holy book. So it's word games. It's kind of like word games with God. You can't talk about or think about God without thinking about the Christian God, because that is, with a capital G. It's the title, the name, but not the name. No. It's not even Yahweh. And if you want to go into the Elohim, then you're still just going back to the fish hat fools. It's just word games. It's always word games. And threats. But no, it's not a threat. I'm sorry. It's not a threat. If you don't believe this narrative, well, then you will go to hell and you will suffer and you'll be tormented for just not buying my story. I don't have to explain it to you, because if you don't believe, you're already damned. It's not a threat. No, you chose this. You brought it on yourself by believing in your construct. Is that my sin? Really? There are all these sins that I need to be saved from. One of the biggest one is not believing in your God. That's one of the biggest sins I need to be saved from. It doesn't matter which God it is. I don't care if it has 8 hands or it's angry all the time, or there's nothing to satisfy it outside of it sacrificing itself to pay the debt that it put on beings that could never pay it off until it sacrificed itself to itself, and it knew that was what was going to happen the entire time. I need to be saved from my involvement in that. You don't need the tales to be good. Like, what is it? The moral of the story is you don't need the stories to have morals. There are easy ways of remembering them, absolutely, but you don't got to go Bible thumping. You don't got to go beating people over the head if they don't wear a funny little hat, or they don't wear like a bit of cloth around their waist and always carry a knife and have a turban and have like some bangles and whatever the 5th thing the Sikhs are supposed to carry or have on them at all times. I mean, no matter what Bible you read, God, the main protagonist or concept narrator, like, they always win. It's a true statement. There's a lot of true statements. Use logic. Well, logically, what is a true statement? What is true? What is a statement? Pontius Pilate asked a very similar thing what is truth? Are you this? And Jesus would say, "Yeah, that's what they say. It's true that that's what they said. Absolutely." Okay, well, is what they say true? You'd have to ask them. That's what they say. I'm not the one making the claim. They might have claimed I make the claim. I didn't write the book. Not like Buddha. You know, don't worship me, bro. Follow the footsteps down the middle path so you can learn to walk on your own, and then you're free to go wherever you like. But no, it's never good enough. Like unless you conform, unless you think for yourself in all ways, but this one way, because it's a sin to think for yourself. I pity the fool. Don't be tofu. Like everything is filtered through a construct, everything like a reality tunnel, if you will. And it all goes through that and all reinforces what you think, well, this is. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of it, but at the same time, I made a video series a few years ago, and so far they've all been on point. I mean, if you knew where this was going, if you knew what you were looking at, a lot of the stuff that comes out as a review, it draws people in. And then we're back to the beginning of, I'm glad they're finally talking about it. I'm glad they're looking at this. I'm not necessarily happy about what's being done with their attention at all times, but you know, if I really wanted to be in charge of that, then I could have been that guy. Not kept a low profile. Come up with some crazy story. Narrative. Don't get me wrong, I have that. Anyone who, yeah, I have that. But it doesn't necessarily translate in the same way. Like, I'm never going to tell you to drink bleach. I'm never going to just flat out accept your viewpoint on reality. I'm not going to placate you. I'm not going to let you fall into the same trap that Lucifer did. Let's go with that. I mean, like a lot of that, it's why'd Lucifer fall? His ego, right? It was the ego. It's like, okay, yes, I showed them the thing, and they should be really thankful to me, right? I showed them the thing. They don't know about the thing, but really it's about the thing, not about the you. Some recognition, be great, be wonderful. That'd be nice. But it's not about me. It's about the thing. The truth. Objective truth, not subjective truth, because there's a lot of subjective truths out there, but the thing, that's the point. It's about the message, not the messenger. And a lot of people may want to consider toning down their preconceived notions when trying to notice the specks in other people's eyes. It's like, if only you knew the way. It's like, right, and you don't. That's the problem. So I'm going to stop listening here. Like, it's not, I'm not saying like we need to bow down to atheists, because in a sense, there is no God. But at the same time, there is, in the sense that God is everything. Literally. There is a step below that where there's a personality, but above that has to be pure acceptance. It has to be yes, just pure yes. That's a thing. That's a thing. The thing. Everything's just, it exists. That's great. Awesome. And then you can have an eye for definition, delineation, division, discrimination. This is thing. This is not that thing. And this is neither of those things. You know what I mean? Now, between all these things, there's this big old no thing, but it's defined by not being thing. You can't have no thing without thing. It's a true statement. It's kind of like you can know nothing, you can know something, you can know some things, you can know all things. But if you know something or some things or all things, you don't know nothing because you know something. And then you get into, well, then how does God know what it is to not know? Well, clearly, not knowing is being experienced through you, not vicariously, literally. God exploring itself, you want to put it that way. Like, a lot of this has to do with the limitations of language, and I just use God as a um, common parlance, if you will. But ultimately, the religion stuff, that's one of the biggest pushes. It's like, you're doing so well. Just keep questioning those you thought you could trust. They usually wear robes in public. Just throwing that out there. Um, they have fancy hats a lot of times. Maybe some little neck thing. But you got to question them. And a lot of them might mean well. I mean, they really might mean well. And that's awesome. You don't need the story to have the morals. It's just anecdotes. It's ways of relating information. It's examples, if you will. Like, I'd rather be Christ-like than Christian. I figure it's a lot like becoming a Bodhi, if you will. I mean, nothing's impossible. Everything's out there. All timelines happen, obviously. Just because, I mean, if God asks a question, how many answers does God get? All of them. But is that a silly question? Does God even ask questions? Or does God have all the answers and questions are ways of arranging them? Crazy how that works out. It's a change of perspective. Like, a lot of times when the right tries to go at it with who they dub atheists, they really don't mean what they think they mean. Theism is not the belief in God. Theism is the belief in religions, in groups of people's opinions about how God may or may not be. And sometimes that's a threat of violence. Better believe, or Allah Akbar, or Deus Vult, or were the Maccabees. I mean, Hinduism. It's a lot of violence in those books. Buddhism, a lot of times they keep to themselves, but at the same time they don't. Like, it's not just the Pope that bugs kids. Buggers, excuse me. It's not just the Pope that buggers kids. It's the Dalai Lama too. Like, he's just as false of a prophet. Not a prophet, but just as false of a prick. They all are. And why do y'all listen to them? Anyway, I think that's enough. Do a cue. Praise kick. Go, Jonas. We got this. Let's do this. Let's get rid of all these people who would use these mind games against us. Because it could be positive. A lot of people will argue that Dharma and religion are different because a Dharma is a way of life, but how is a religion not? Oh, it's just a thought construct. Well, what do you consider a way of life? So I'll make sure to pray for you, because you need it, because I know that you're not praying to who I'm praying to. And they miss you. They're not actually angry. Most of the times they're not pissed off because they're chill. And they get it. I mean,